think we're good.
All right. Good to go. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Hour 000. We are here with Randy McStine. What was that guy's name? Max Headroom?
Max Headroom, yeah.
Awesome.
Super 80s.
We're trying this over again. Sorry about that before. We had some technical difficulties. This is only our second guest podcast / stream, so thank you for bearing with us. We're here with Randy McStine. I'm going to say it again. Awesome beard, awesome hair, awesome guitar player, killer songwriter, great vocalist, a jack of all trades, and just an all-around cool guy. So thank you, Randy, for joining us, and welcome to Hour 0 podcast.
Thanks for having me.
By the way, that was the most pro intro ever.
That was really good. We should make that the intro to every one of these.
Can you play my song over again?
We could. We'll just sit here and just react.
I actually think everyone heard it because it was playing. I think they caught that audio. They just didn't hear my vocal for some reason. But yeah, man. So we wanted to have you on. We like I was saying when we first did the first mulligan take. We're trying to have people on that we're friends with, that we're fans of, and just kind of get up to speed with like what they're doing with projects, and just kind of hang out for the next 45 minutes or so, just to say hey and let people know what you're up to and how things are going with the world. And that's kind of where we're going to go with this, if you're cool with it. So
yeah, man, let's wherever you want to go. Let's do it.
Well, obviously, if people don't know, there was news that came out the beginning of the month, right? You've got the new McStine and Minneman, project, kind of doing that, and that's coming out in what, June or something?
The record comes out July 3rd.
July 3rd. So I heard a sampler. I can't remember which article it was in. I'll find it, but there was a killer sampler, and it sounded awesome.
Thank you.
Now you've worked with him before, right?
Yeah, we met in the fall of 2018. Through a project of Dave Kersner's called In Continuum.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And essentially, I've been working with Dave since 2011, I think. So we've worked on a lot of stuff together, his solo stuff, my solo stuff. And In Continuum was kind of meant to be originally a reformation of the band Sound of Contact. And when that didn't happen, Dave and Matt Dorsey, the bass player, they wanted to keep working together and take some of the material that they were going to use for that into this new project, hence In Continuum. And, Dave kind of conceived it as like an Alan Parsons project kind of situation where he could bring in a lot of guest musicians to kind of flesh out the vision that he had for it. And so he brought me in, and I had a history with Sound of Contact in their live band after their first album came out. John Wesley was their first live guitarist from Porcupine Tree.
Porcupine Tree, yeah.
And then when John left, I stepped into the role for a couple of tours. We did a European tour with the Flower Kings and some U.S. stuff as well. And so it was natural to bring me in for it. And but he had hired Marco to play on basically most of the first In Continuum record. So I didn't know Marco prior on a personal level. Of course, I've known his, playing and records that he's played on for years.
Yeah.
And so that was really exciting for me on a personal level. And the first song that I worked on for that record was a song called Scavengers. And when I got that song in its sort of rough form, it was basically just like a demo piano and some scratch vocals and just Marco just blazing through the whole thing. And there was no bass or anything else on it. So I was really able to kind of get in there and sort of sync up with what Marco was doing on the track. And so that felt really fun musically, just from like a project point of view, And to be honest, I had no prospect of ever really meeting the guy. I assumed that this would be like most studio projects where, we all kind of put our parts in there and it gets mixed and then off it goes. And then Dave booked the band for Prog Stock in 2018 and told me that Marco was going to be playing drums for the live gig. So I was like, wow, this is great. So that's where we met for the first time, was in the rehearsal room in Rahway, New Jersey, at that rehearsal place across the street from the theater there. And we only had like 2 or 3 rehearsals to get the show together, and but in the rehearsal room, and then certainly outside of the rehearsal room when we were just kind of hanging out in the town, the two of us really got to talking and really vibed about a lot of different things, and specifically like music outside of progressive rock, a lot of hard rock stuff, even some punk rock stuff, frankly, and we kind of carried that through. It was interesting because it was like a really condensed period of time. We were there to play that gig, and then we got on a flight like that Sunday and went and played this one-off in Chicago. And then I didn't see him again until, I don't know, March of 2019. And then we played Cruise to the Edge with In Continuum. And again, you're on a boat for 5 days. So we had plenty of time to just kind of hang out and drink and talk. And I really started to sense like, man, this is a guy that, was nothing like what I expected in terms of what his influences were and the kind of stuff that we were talking about. And I really started to think like, this is somebody that I could collaborate with. And so the next step from there was I sent him a song of mine called Bottom Feeder Blues to play drums on. He did that. And then, he really liked, that was the first time he'd heard my writing, because all he had context-wise was through Dave's music. Mm-hmm. So he heard that song, he really dug it, and then he kind of reciprocated by saying, well, I've got this solo album I'm working on called My Sister. I'm also working on stuff with Alex Lifeson. Like, would you be interested in doing that? I was like, yeah.
I'm busy.
Let me check. So I ended up singing on a song of Marco's called Blessed, which is on that record, My Sister, and played some guitar on it as well. And then it was several months after that, I was just kind of up one night thinking just what I might want to get into. And I sent him a text message and just said, like, hey, what do you think about trying to do like a collaborative EP together? Let's keep it like low bar of expectation. We don't have to commit to an album. We don't have to commit to anything. I just thought stylistically, if I picked a few tunes and he picked a few songs, and we just sort of threw some ideas at each other, we might be able to put something together that was really cool. And that's how the whole thing started. So from October 2019 to now, now we have a full record that we're getting ready to put out.
That's really amazing, man. It's interesting. I want to hit on a couple points that you mentioned. One is the outside prog influences, and we found, being a band for a long time and being in and around the scene, that there are a lot of musicians who we come in contact with that pretty much the only thing they listen to is, for lack of a better term, prog related music, right? Where we found that some of the most interesting musicians who play prog but are influenced by a million different things that are not, and that's what actually makes it progressive. Have you found similar things? Is that what you found with Marco when you guys would talk about music anyway? Even
yeah. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but at the same time, we've just started to do interviews together. So this stuff, it's not like I'm not speaking out of turn by saying this. He's not really much of a prog guy, which will surprise a lot of people. But he loves like Gentle Giant and that kind of stuff, but he's not big on like the kind of fantasy prog.
Yeah.
He doesn't like love Yes and funny enough, like when we talk about Yes, we both talk about how we love the album Talk, which is like one of the albums that most people are like,
that most people hate, right? Yeah.
But me personally, like Trevor Rabin is a huge influence, and that was the first concert I ever saw was the Talk tour. They opened that tour in Binghamton, New York, which is basically where I grew up. And my first concert ever as a 6-year-old kid, it was like a week after my birthday, front row center at the Broome County Arena to see Yes open their Talk tour. And I mean, that's a part of my, obviously, like everything kind of starts there. So I love that stuff. And I think that's an incredibly underrated album, especially just the production ideas and stuff in there. But anyways, I mean, we would find ourselves talking about like Public Image Limited, The Flowers of Romance, Like that record, I don't know if you've ever heard it. It's just like so outside of anything. And that was a moment where I realized, like, oh, this is a guy who has he's coming from a completely different place, even though he's an incredibly technical, renowned musician.
But his heart is in other things. He can play anything, right?
Like we took, Kraftwerk and Gary Newman and, like the early Van Halen records, and Queen. He's like a gigantic Queen fan. So this is all the stuff that we were kind of geeking out over, which went a long ways in terms of, from my songwriting point of view, saying like, oh, we can really try a lot of stuff here.
So I'd imagine that freed you up a lot in a way, like, oh, I can write anything and it'll be cool. Like we can get into different territory than maybe would have previously if this was Prog project that we're doing or whatever.
Right. If I was thinking of him in that sort of tunnel vision, and just throwing like, verbatim Prog stuff at him, and that, so we're with this record, we're kind of coming from a completely different energy, but, because obviously it's a big part of who I am and it is a part of who he is and obviously what he's known for.
Sure.
I think you get that blend that you're talking about where it's not prog, but it's progressive. So it's very, very musically dense, but not what you'd expect really from the two of us.
Well, I mean, just like when we have conversations in our band, I mean, don't get me wrong, we all listen to a lot of, progressive music. We do.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's conversations about, it's about pop music. It's about, even rarely some country stuff or like hip hop stuff. I mean, I think that, you can't, the people that want to have all those things at their fingertips, all that type of color and all that, those huge palettes to play with, you kind of have to appreciate things that are outside of that standard template that's, kind of being shoved down, people's throats over the past few years. And it obviously, has morphed and changed into different types of things, but there's still there's the hallmark of the newer school progressive rock music that's been over the past 15 to 20 years, like the same 7/8, twinkle, I don't say twinkle, but that same 7/8, 2-2-3, beating Dugan Gang, and we do it too. We're just as guilty. So if everybody, I know there's going to be comments. I know we do it too, because it's awesome. But like, you got to be able to say, well, we should do something like "Ready to Die," like by Biggie right here. Like, well, nobody would ever think that I would say that, but I'm thinking of that production wise or groove wise, like the way things drop or something. You got to be able to pull from all that stuff, So being able to find somebody like him, who obviously, I mean, first of all, I got to say the drummers that you've played with are all like my heroes. I went to school for drums, so I'm a drummer. So
yeah. I'm a closet drummer too. So it's like
like Marco is absolutely bananas. And like literally, like when you say bananas is actually the best term I could think of.
That's about as close.
Literally is bananas when you watch him play. Like if you were to say, name one drummer that you'd consider bananas, it would definitely be him. Just watch him play. But like to hear like he comes from that, like, I'm not saying he's an anti-prog school kind of guy, but to come from some place where it reaches back into some other things, that's really inspiring. Because I know that sometimes I wonder if I'm like too far removed from the scene. Like when I'm like, I don't, I know a lot of stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes people start geeking out over some really deep cuts, like that. I'm just like, I love progressive rock, but sometimes I get a little lost in it too, in terms of the catalogs,
Yeah.
But,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, but like when you're working on something, like with somebody like him, and you guys are batting ideas back and forth, is this like? Do you envision? Do you kind of send like full templates to each other of like, this is kind of like the progression, this is kind of the groove, like in your head, and then kind of let each other kind of develop upon it, or is it kind of like, I have this riff or I have this progression, do whatever you want, or like, how do you guys do that?
So this record, the way I started that initial, conversation was based around a conversation I had with him prior about how the Aristocrats do things, which is that they all bring in their own compositions. You know, like, so let's say it's a 12-song album and they've all written 4 songs apiece. Those songs are solely written by each member of the band, therefore giving them sort of veto power or, you know, production control over how the whole thing comes together. It's more so like, this is the song I wrote for the album. You know, these are the parts that I wrote. Obviously, everybody can embellish, but this is the song, so this is how we're going to do it. And I thought, like, well, that's a very democratic way of doing things. And in the case of those guys, I mean, they're all like superheroes, right? So they all have a super unique vision on their instruments and as composers. So that makes total sense to me, actually. So when I framed the idea of doing an EP, I thought, well, that's the path of least resistance. You know, I'll pick 3 of my songs, you pick 3 of yours, but we can collaborate within that, because I'm very much interested in, you know, he's not just a drummer. That's the thing. Like, people don't realize Marco has like 25 solo records or something. You know, he's super prolific, and people know him based on, you know, maybe the 2 records he did with Steven Wilson or Joe Satriani or the Aristocrats. But he's been making solo records for like 20 years or something. So, and he's also a really proficient guitar player. He grew up playing piano before he played drums. So, you know, there's a lot of depth there beyond just the drums. And of course, when you get to the drums, his breakdown and understanding of rhythms is just like mind-boggling.
Yeah.
You know, you can get into every single nook and cranny of anything that you're doing, really. So that to me is really inspiring, because I'm not actually like really a deep theory guy. I come more so from just kind of feeling it and listening to a ton of things and kind of absorbing things. He has both, though. He has the super analytical side where he can break down everything, and obviously the other side of it as well. So long story long, I thought if I bring 3 songs to the table and he brings 3 songs to the table, and we remain kind of open about the ideas that we pass back and forth, we'll naturally get into a collaborative kind of situation. So once it morphed from 6 songs to, hey, let's do a 10-song record, what we've essentially ended up with is, I guess, 4 songs that I wrote, 4 songs that he wrote, and then 2 co-writes, which are also springboards off of one or the other's ideas, right? So, so that's basically the format for the record. It's almost like we kind of like my song Program, which is the first single that we released. That opens the record, and then the next song on the record is a song that he had originally sort of written for the sessions for the band The Sea Within, and that they kind of drafted it, and it didn't make it on the record. And I took that and kind of rewrote a bunch of melodic content, so that became a co-write. And then, you know, he has some songs that are singular vision as well. So even the songs that aren't co-writes, I just think that the influence on each other and what we brought to the table, you know, it's the perfect thing that you want from a partnership, which is that it's already a good foundation, but the other person brings it to the next level, and together we make it into something that we couldn't have done on our own, basically.
Well, to tag off that a little bit, we heard, for those of you who are listening and don't know, we played a gig in Nyack with Randy opening last November. I think it was November, right? Something like that. And Randy does this whole solo guitar singer-songwriter thing, which is incredible, with a lot of your own music. And at that show is when you sort of just mentioned to the people that, oh yeah, you know, I have an album coming out with Marco Minneman. And so obviously you'd been, you know, fomenting these ideas for quite a while, you know, or maybe you were getting into the thick of writing at that point. How do you, when you're sitting down and you're writing something, you have a lot of hands in a lot of different fires, right? You have your own solo projects, you have the band, you have the sort of solo act, and all the other side things that you do. How do you know when you're writing? Do you get a feeling like, okay, I think this is going to be good for the album with Marco, or nah, this one's for me? Like, do you know that, or do you have to sort of workshop it in order to tell?
That's a good question. I think I'm getting better at kind of segmenting things, and that's not to say that I want to intentionally sort of like put things in a box to say like this goes here and this goes there. But it's out of those conversations, those personal conversations. Like one of the things that kind of happened all the way through was we would just simply just text each other like record sleeves of stuff that we were listening to, you know, like, this is what I'm listening to today. I'm like, oh, cool, man. You know, like just kind of geeking out about music and getting a sense of direction and energy from one another. I think that kind of helped me think about like, okay, well, we're both pretty prolific writers, you know, but it was like what drove me to pick the songs that I picked for this particular project. And I think that's kind of what happened. You know, it was just like a sense of energy, a sense of influence, and saying like, well, as you pointed out earlier, I've been super fortunate to work with just a lot of amazing drummers. And I guess if you want to really dig deep, you know, you start to wonder like, well, I've got this song and I know these drummers, they would all be great for it, but who's the one that really is going to like see that vision through the way I see it as a songwriter and as an arranger. And so in the case of this record, like we really kind of got to this, you know, there's a lot of aggressive material, and it's like the heaviest record I've ever made. It's very up-tempo, very, again, I'm going to use that word punky, which is going to throw people who are expecting like the prog thing. It's like a punk rock engine, but with all of this other stuff kind of around it. You know, you get that sense of aggression and urgency from the material. Another unpopular prog thing, the songs are super short. They're all under 4 minutes. They're like the epic on the record is 4.5 minutes. It's just like very dense, very compact, very precise, but left turns all the time. And, you know, just like we're going to take you somewhere and then drop you off a cliff and then try to bring you back. And I really enjoy that about this record that we've made, because it's, you know, it's like it can fit into a hard rock kind of context, but there's other super avant-garde things happening. Like we were trying to come up with a few different artists just to name check in like a press release, because people always ask, what do you guys sound like? And Marco is like, he likes talking about it like the Knack or something. He's like, I think we kind of sound like the Knack, and you know, Queen, and then some other names were like Mr. Bungle and XTC. So like these are all names that are like they're like kind of on the outer edges of what you would call prog.
Sure.
But you could take any of those artists, and it's like, well, what era of XTC are you talking about, or what era of Queen or Zappa?
Right.
You know,
Right.
like these are really big sort of umbrellas, and even a little bit of Gentle Giant too, I sense in there. But it's not always in like the most typical kind of way. It might just be for like 5 seconds, you know, but it's there. So,
well, that to me, that's sort of we've had this conversation a lot with our friends and other bands, and on this, even on this podcast, is like, how do you like, what is being progressive meaning? Is it a genre that started with Sgt. Pepper's and sort of ended with 1980? Is that sort of is that the what happened, or is it a mindset where you open up and take in whatever strikes your fancy? It doesn't matter where it comes from, and it sounds like you're sort of on the latter definition, for at least for this record. You want, like, yeah, it's sort of, it has all this stuff to it, but at the heart of it, there's all these sort of different disparate influences that you end up sort of, you know, masterfully combining, which is pretty amazing, I think.
Thank you. It's definitely the latter. And this is a common sort of debate slash, internet forum argument that
Sure.
will happen till the end of time. But I've always felt that way. Even when I started with the Lo-Fi Resistance project in 2010 was when the first record came out, which is essentially a solo album, but under a band name. I never intended to make, prog music. It's just that it's always been an influence and a huge influence on me. But that's the thing, the way it tends to show its face, sometimes it's more intentional than other times, but a lot of the time it's just a part of who I am. And, I like, these days I kind of think about genres as like their own colors that you can paint with. And I don't really understand why there's such a need to like categorize things to like the smallest degree. I remember signing up for, I don't know, some site, to put my music on. It could have been SoundCloud or any one of those, and they're asking you like, what's your main genre? And then what's your subgenre? And I remember clicking that subgenre tab and it was just like
endless, right?
So deep. And I just kept scrolling. I was like, what the fuck are all of these genres?
Post, pre, during, resistant, hardcore prog.
I felt like this is so ridiculous. It's like, what happened to just saying like it's rock music that gets a little adventurous,
Right.
Because even the word prog, like it's so inside. It's like nobody knows what that is unless you're among the people who like specifically love that thing. It's like why narrow it down to such a small increment? So I definitely feel the latter, which is that it was never intended to be a genre. You know what I mean? You gotta look at the history of like what was happening with music in the 60s, people being influenced by jazz and classical music, and then rock instrumentation coming in with the Beatles and of course, Elvis and all that stuff, and blues music, and saying, how do we apply jazz and classical music and all these things that we love in pop music to like elevate the art form of pop and rock music? And then you get to things like Procol Harum and the Beatles doing Sgt. Pepper, and then like, in the Court of the Crimson King arrives and people are like, what the fuck is this? And then Keith Emerson and the Nice. But it's it's such a condensed period of time, like, 1967 to 1970. And then you get into the 70s, technology has a big thing to do with it. Like for people who don't like progressive rock music or don't think that they could like it, I often try to say like, well, go back to the first couple of albums of all those bands. Like the first ELP record is basically all piano and organ. Like there's only a little bit of synthesizer on there. It's like a trio format, a band trying to play classical music in a rock trio context, because you've got Hendrix Experience, you have Cream, Mountain, like all of these like rock bands, and they're trying to do it in their own way. And then by the time you get to the mid 70s, you get to like Tales of Topographic Oceans, and now we're getting into this very bloated kind of thing. And it's not to say that it's not great music, but that's like the moment where like it changes from becoming an ideal to becoming a genre. And then like most things, it kind of eats its own tail, and then other things kind of come along in popular sense, like punk music or whatever, and kind of comes in and kind of knocks the wall down. And I feel like once that happened, like it's been a genre ever since, So now it's like you've got this legacy component, and then you've got bands who are trying to push the boundaries further. I mean, have you heard that new Fiona Apple record?
I just started listening to it literally this morning.
What do you think? What's your early impression of it?
I liked it. I thought it was a little bit. She's always pretty out in my mind. Like I loved Title, and I absolutely loved When the Pawn. Right, I thought those two records were fantastic, and I'm a huge fan of those first two records. I kind of fell off a little bit in terms of some of the other stuff. It couldn't catch me. But
Yeah.
I just started listening to it, and I literally was I got through like the first 3 tunes, and I was like, I feel this is good. It's like exploring, but it's not at the same time. I don't really know how to like describe it. I'd have to like go back in and find it. Like, but I remember putting it on, and I was like, yeah, it sounds like quirky Fiona Apple. I was very satisfied.
Right. But that's the thing. It's like a sense of not being able to pinpoint exactly what it is. I mean, we seek patterns, right? You know, you want everybody when they hear something for the first time kind of wants to connect.
Know what it is, yeah.
That they know.
Sure.
So for me, when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I get like a strong Kate Bush thing or a little bit of John Mitchell here and there. And that's all cool. I mean, we all have our influences. My influences they're all over the place. You know, I never know when something is going to pop up. And it's funny too, how sometimes you can know as a writer directly what you're influenced by, but somebody else hears something completely different. Like maybe it's kind of surface level. Like anytime you do like a 2-minute kind of spacey intro, somebody's like, oh man, it's like Pink Floyd. It's like, no, it's not like Pink Floyd. Yes, it is like Pink Floyd, but
it's not. Yeah,
10 other things that are like more obscure and weirder or whatever. But you know, people have to have their sort of like baseline thing that they go back to. So yeah, progressive rock. Is it an ideal? Is it a genre? Now it's kind of both because
it depends on where you're looking.
Yeah, and I've always been reluctant to plant the flag there. It's where I seem to be known. It's where I've gotten a lot of fans and attention. So I'm not looking to bite the hand that feeds, and I'm not going to deny that I love that music. I mean, that's the other thing, which is funny, that like all of these musicians who are in prominent progressive rock bands that I now am friends with, I find that when I have conversations with them, like my knowledge and my record collection runs like way deeper than a lot of these guys. I mean, I can't name names, but like I remember talking to somebody once and I was just shocked when he was like, yeah, I never really got Gentle Giant. I'm like, what do you mean? Like your band directly channeled that energy and you don't like them? You know, so that kind of thing is funny to me, but I'm learning that it's not actually all that surprising. You know, just sometimes musicians fall into a scenario where that's the music they play, and it doesn't mean they don't like it, but it also doesn't mean that they grew up really listening to it, you know?
So we actually, John and I went to, when we were in music school, went to school with a guy named Mike, and Mike's band, you know, everything he wrote, we'd be like, oh my God, dude, this sounds exactly like Frank Zappa. Like, so much like Frank Zappa. You know what I'm talking about, right, John?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like,
Incredible.
It's unbelievable. Like,
and he's like I've never listened to Frank Zappa before.
I'm like,
not once.
that cannot be true. Never once. But you know, I think there's something to be said for, you know, you don't listen to your heroes, you listen to your heroes' heroes. And if everyone kind of does that, you know, it should kind of all run upstream to kind of where you are today. And they might not even realize, that little riff is, you know, it's an old, you know, to Joni Mitchell tune or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Never even noticed that. Cool.
I'm just going to jump in here. We got a couple questions in the chat before we continue. Joseph Callahan says, the conversations on genres makes me insane. Definitely feel you on that, Joe. Andrew says, what's funny is on the Head with Wings podcast, that's what we did last week, I mentioned prog being a mindset. It's awesome seeing another musician speak that mindset. Prog is a mindset unafraid to express itself, and one of the reasons I love it so much.
Cool.
Yeah, that's right, Andrew. That's a really good way of putting it. And Joe says, the best albums are the ones that take multiple listens to get it. And I agree, because some of my favorite stuff was stuff that I thought was, I hated it when I first heard it. And I was like, I don't get this. Why does anybody like it? But I usually would just force myself to listen to it 5 times or whatever. And then by the 5th time, it's like, oh.
All right, let's do it.
Okay,
let's do it.
Wow.
What's a record? Let's go around the horn then. What's a record? Because I have one in my head. I know the exact record where I heard it the first time, and I was like, all right. And you guys are going to think I'm crazy. I'm not going to go first, though. I'm going to go last, because I want to. I don't want to, like, I can change it if I need to. If
I got one that's
you
gonna,
guys.
I got one that's going to divide our audience, but that's okay. Go ahead, Dave. You start.
I really want to go first. All right.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to think I'm crazy, but I thought that the second Bush record, Razorblade Suitcase, was phenomenally good. First time I heard it, I was like, this is weird. I felt like all the guitars are tuned up like a quarter step. Like it's like a semitone sharp. So everything has this really, I don't want to say brittle, but it's like slightly bent. And that's the only thing I can think of. And like, it really hit me like really hard. And I listened to it like maybe 2 or 3 times. And I was like, dude, this album is fantastic. And I don't understand why people just kind of like have a nice day, granted they were like that, what was it? 16 Stone had all those like mega hits, like those 90s mega hits, which I got. I thought they were great songs, whatever. I actually wrote a version of Glycerine called Quarantine, but I heard a little pushback. People thought it was a little too early
on the nose, dude. Come on.
It was very on the nose, but it was fantastic, and I'm going to record it anyway. But that second record came out, and it just had a really gloomy, weird, very twisted vibe, and I just loved the way it sounded. And so that's for people that I'm not, I like Bush, I guess. I guess that's a guilty pleasure. I'll admit it.
All right. I'll do mine. I'm hearing gasps across the internet right now. It's going to be my first listen through of Scenes from a Memory, Dream Theater, which is now my favorite album of all time. Speaking of Prog, I did not get it the first time. I got it early at this place in Connecticut that any of you Connecticut people know. It was in Phoenix Records in Waterbury, and they used to get records in weeks early, and you could go pick them up under the counter. And I picked it up, and I put it on with my friend, and I was like, I don't get this at all. I loved some of the parts were great. I didn't hate it like we're talking some of these other things, but I didn't get it at all. And after I think 3 listen throughs straight through, I took it home and I listened to it on repeat for a week, and then here we are 20 years later or whatever, and it's like, like my number 1 or number 2 album of all time that changed my life. So you never know.
Well, I mean, listen, I had this conversation with somebody very recently, actually, about the difference between like when you hear something for the first time and immediately fall in love with it.
Right.
And how that sometimes like you get bored with it very quickly. And it's the albums that challenge you on the first listen. I mean, it can't be something that you outright hate, right? Because if you have like a physical reaction to something, 9 times out of 10, you could be like, there's no way you just kind of know internally that you're probably not going to like it. But, the first time I heard Radiohead in Rainbows, I was like,
it's a great record.
I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't get it. But enough of it, of course, was intriguing to the point where you can not get it, but then maybe it haunts you a little bit. You're like, but I gotta get it.
Yeah, right.
To understand this. That was one of those. I remember when, to keep it super proggy, when Pain of Salvation's album B came out, like, people were just so torn over that thing, because it was like the first 2 or 3 songs, like almost like straight, like hip hop elements in the vocals. And, but I really got into it for a while. I haven't listened to it in years, but at the time, like I really worked at it and developed the taste for it. And then to bring it back, I know you said 1, but I'm going 3.
Yeah, go 3.
Go for it.
Go bloated here. The album I mentioned earlier, Public Image Limited, this record called Flowers of Romance. So have you guys ever heard any of their stuff before?
Not
so
me.
that was Johnny Rotten after...
Post Sex Pistols?
Post Sex Pistols, yeah.
Okay.
Really interesting stuff.
What's the record? I'm going to put it in my note.
It's called The Flowers of Romance. And the whole record, I mean, I don't even know how to describe this record. It's like super percussive. The drum sounds on it had a direct influence on Phil Collins, that In the Air Tonight.
The slap.
Sound,
yeah.
Because they were recording that album and he kind of like popped in on the sessions, I mean, they were already working towards that sound with like the Peter Gabriel records and stuff, but this album has a very definitive drum sound. There's almost no bass on the record. It's like very free form, just rhythmic kind of stuff. And John Lydon just kind of yelping over everything. And it's like the first time I heard it, I was like, this is terrifying. And I don't know what the hell is happening. And I don't know why any record label would release this. Like, hey, yeah. But it just had something that like it gets its hooks into you, you know? And then over time, it just like, it radically changed the way I thought about what was possible in like composition, you know, because it's so just out there. And funny enough, I mean, years later, so I discovered that record in 2012 or 2013. And that's the thing that, like, when I mentioned that, when Marco and I started talking about Public Image Limited for no apparent reason, and he said, "What's your favorite record of theirs?" And I said, "Flowers of Romance." And his face just lit up, you know, and it was like a total high five moment. I think we literally high fived about it. But that showed me, like, because, you know, as a music geek, like when you find those records that are really rare and weird and you bond over it,
right,
it says a lot about a person.
Sure.
That, like, you can not only tolerate it, but that you love it. You
emotionally, know? you take it in, and the other person does too. It's a big
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
And I think that's actually, like, odd segue, but one of the things about wearing, like, when you see somebody at a concert with, like, in a really obscure T-shirt, that can be like a lifetime experience. You know, it's like, wow, that guy's wearing a Kevin Gilbert shirt or something, and it's like, you know, that the amount of people who know what that is like
is
such
very small, right?
Thing. It suggests a lot about what that person likes, what their tastes are, what their humor might be. It's like,
sure.
It's like a whole personal thing that ties back to music. And if you're passionate about music, you know, that opens up a whole thing. So yeah, those are just like 3 examples of records.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
The Flowers of Romance came out in 1981.
Yeah, check it out. And then when
I'll cue it up. I'm going to listen to it tonight.
When you press play and then you hear him just kind of like yell for the first time, you're going to be like, what the hell is this? You know?
So the last time I had a what the hell is this moment, not that long ago, I was in my house and I was just putzing around on YouTube, and I found a band called High Lung.
Oh, yeah.
They are a kind of like a tribal kind of, it's very chanty tribal kind of stuff. It's very theatrical. It's more of a performance. It literally is like almost like a ritual, if you will. It's not even like a concert. I don't even know.
Yeah, they're like it's like a Celtic warrior.
It's
concert,
true,
right?
Yeah,
like legitimately.
It's true performance art. And yeah. I watched a video on it and I was like, what am I watching? How is this happening? And I was like, I literally felt like, because I'm a video game fan. So I don't know if you play it, but John, like, it made me feel. I know you played Diablo. I don't know if you ever played, or Randy. I don't know if you play video games, but
not really.
It had this, like, you know, Dungeons and Dragons kind of. I'm really simplifying, because you know what Dungeons and Dragons probably is, but it kind of had this, like, I felt like something wrong. I was doing something wrong.
Right.
Like, it felt so intense in terms of like where the inspiration was coming from, that I literally felt like something was going wrong. And I actually I brought it to a rehearsal. We were actually recording our last record, Fifth Row record. I brought it to rehearsal and I had it on my phone queued up, because the singer has this cool little semitone section where she basically just yells these like very straight toned, you know, chants the whole time, and then she does one little like little run, if you will, that was like so awesomely perfect and tasteful.
I remember that.
Dude, what is this? Yeah. So I remember I brought it to rehearsal and I played it, and our bass player Jocko was like, dude, I can't watch this. This is not for me. This is just not my style. Like, not in a I don't appreciate it musically, in a this is making me feel dirty. Like something's wrong about what's happening. So I highly, if you really want to get kind of tweaked out, for anybody on the chat, you should check out the band High Lung. Tuohy, maybe you could type it in there. It's Heilun. It means life.
Okay.
I don't even know where they're from, but if you want to listen to just
Scandinavia or something.
Yeah, if you want to just listen to like 10 minutes of just like, and then just chanting with like bone claves and stuff. I don't know. It's insane. You should check it out. That was
awesome.
like way too long to talk about, but
so I have something
man. One more record. Oh, are we on a delay here?
No, go.
We good?
There's no rules.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say have something relating to now. I mean, we can't. Obviously, during this time, there are no live gigs to speak of other than this or playing online. I know you have something coming up which you could tell us about, which would be great. I think with the great Adam Holzman, who is going to be on our show on Monday.
Awesome.
But how releasing an album now, where it's almost impossible to go out and play. Like, I don't know if you were planning on doing some select dates or anything originally. How do you see releasing music now versus 6 months ago versus maybe what we're going to do in a year or two? Like, since you're the perfect prime subject for this, since you're releasing something right in the summer. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll quote Marco. He's got this idea of like when you cook a dish, you want to serve it while it's hot, right? So that's kind of the approach we're taking. I mean, before all this happened, the idea was that we would get the album out by June. We were talking about playing some live shows on the West Coast because he lives in California, and putting together a band playing like 2 CD release shows, maybe at a small club or something. And then he was going to go out on tour with the Aristocrats in Asia and, bring CD copies on tour and, get it out that way, put it on the merch table. Mm-hmm. We build our social media presence and all that kind of shit and do it that way. And then kind of when that was all said and done, kind of see where we're at. And so now obviously that everything has kind of changed. We just didn't see a reason to sort of delay anything. I mean, from a business perspective, obviously the financial situation is varied for everybody. I mean, some people are doing fine because they've always worked at home and they have, that's just what they do. And then obviously there's a lot of, there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of, all sorts of things going on, right? So I guess we just figured, what's the sense? I mean, we're not on a label. We're releasing this independently. And we also, because we're both at home right now with no, like everybody, no future of gigs at the moment, it was like, let's just finish this. I mean, the record was essentially musically done when this all hit. I mean, November, December, I was on tour opening for the Pineapple Thief, doing my solo thing. And then I came home. He was on tour with the Aristocrats in Europe. And so January and February is when I really just kind of like put all of my focus into this record. And then we got it out to our mixing guy, this guy Forrester Savell. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's in Australia. And he's done records for like Carnival and some other bands.
I love his drum plugin.
What's that?
He has the best drum plugin.
Oh, he has a drum plugin. Cool.
Yeah. So I've used it. John, you know exactly which one it is too.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I mean he's awesome. He came recommended from Marco. He had done some stuff on the last Aristocrats record. He did Brian Beller's last solo record, and so Marco had good experiences with him. And I thought like, yeah, let's do it. And I think he did an amazing job with the record. There's like a real edge to it, but also a lot of nuance, and it's a really good headphone record as well. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, we started the mix phase at like the start of the whole lockdown situation. And I don't know, I mean, we didn't really talk about it that much. It was just like, let's just get it out there and we'll see what happens. So,
well, I think that's cool about forget the problems of the moment, but that's what's cool about the modern technology and the way things are now is that it's like, well, we don't have a label. I'm just, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just put it out. And people, you're getting a bunch of listens, you're getting a bunch of eyeballs on it. You're building up all, your videos that you started putting out and the video clips and things like that. You know,
Right.
It's getting a lot of traction. And it's, what's beautiful about it is it's truly the modern day grassroots way to do things, where in the past you'd have to play, you get in a van and go for 4 years on the road, 10 years on the road before you can make a dent sometimes, right? But now you can get it out there, and it's, you know, equally as good as anything else that is out there or better. And you don't need anybody else behind it, which is pretty amazing in that aspect. And so the fact that you can be home right now and you guys can do your parts and record it at home well, and everything sounds great, and send it out to a great guy to get mixed without having to FedEx it to Australia and like all these things, right?
No, I mean, it's funny because, I mean, this is the way a lot of us have had to work for a long time.
Right.
I mean, you guys are in a band, so you have like a classic band structure in a sense, right? Although don't you have a member who lives
in the West Coast.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so you know what this is like in a way as well. But now that it's like basically mandatory,
Yeah.
the way I look at it is I think it kind of helps the image of things in the sense that it's like, well, we already knew that it was hard to get people together from all over the world to be in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
Now that we physically can't do it anyways, it's like, you know, the fact that everybody's getting on and, you know, whether they're doing like live quarantine concerts or starting to experiment with, you know, kind of split screen video collaborations and stuff. It's actually like, you know, kind of an interesting time because now everybody is embracing it because they have to.
Right.
And so that hasn't changed. I mean, I'm essentially doing what I would be doing anyways if it weren't for having live dates canceled.
Sure.
I had some really cool shit canceled, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to do some dates with Brand X and then Cruise to the Edge, and then there was some other stuff. You know, it was going to be like a nice little live quarter for me that I was just gearing up to do because I was coming out of this phase of finishing the record. And I sort of had my blinders on for that. And then I was just about to make this transition to rehearsing a new live set. And then one by one, you know, obviously things fell like dominoes. You know, the other component was that the week that in New York, like the lockdown started to take place, I had gotten a call from the Big Train guys about doing some live gigs with them because Dave Gregory was going to step down.
Right.
So that week, it was the second week of March, I think. It was so weird because I get this call to gauge my interest on doing that. It's like they've got a tour in May in the U.S., which is going to be their first U.S. tour, and then some dates in July in Europe. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. You know, so everything gets put in place. And then literally within like 2 or 3 days, it's like, all right, well, the US is on lockdown. All those dates are gone in May. So they released this press release like that I'm, you know, going to be doing these dates with them. Like just days before
the lockdown.
everything completely changes. So it's like, it's super weird, you know. It's like one by one, just every opportunity, just going by. But that's everybody, you know.
Sure.
And certainly people in a far off, you know, worse off place than I am. So, I don't even know where I was going with that, other than to say that it just felt like, well, let's just finish this record and let's just get it out there. And it is a weird time because a lot of people are obviously at home. It's a great time to get your music in front of people because I think a lot of people are looking for something new and exciting because of it. On the business side, I don't think anybody really knows. You know, it's a deeper issue because obviously, as we know, like record sales have been down across the board for years. It's just been an incremental slide really ever since Napster, if you want to really go back to it. So we've got to
It's been the 20-year anniversary the other day. My keyboard player informed us all.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like
20 years.
It's a 20-year slide.
Yeah.
In terms of that, I reminded somebody the other day, like if you put out an album in 1990 and sold 150,000 copies, that was a flop.
A flop. Yeah, absolutely. And now you sell. You're number one.
Hootie
150,000.
Hootie and the Blowfish, man. The first record sold how many? Like 27 million copies.
Yeah.
Second record sold like 17 million copies.
And they're like,
I think they got dropped.
Dropped from the
No, I
label.
think they actually got dropped. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean,
No, I
for
think you're
everybody,
right. I think you're right. Yep.
I don't know the exact numbers. I could be wrong, but I'm at like 99% confidence that it was like something literally like you only sold 12 or 17 million copies. And, I don't think the overhead was, $1 billion to make the record.
Yeah.
I mean, so you made money. But yeah, no, I was actually thinking when you said, we're going to put it out anyway, despite what's going on. I personally find myself, you got a lot of people like itching for something, like you said, like maybe it is a good time for some like deep listening because people are stuck at home, and you're in New York, so we've had some kind of like rainy weather the past couple weeks. Yeah. That's why the Fiona Apple record, I started listening to it. I got kind of sidetracked, but I was like, this is a good day to kind of check it out. It's kind of dreary out. I'll put it on. I'll just kind of vibe out with it. But I do think that even with like people like working from home, there's a lot more like private time. Right, if they're doing their TPS reports, yes, that's a Office Space reference. If they're doing like their TPS reports and they want to put on, the new, McStine and Minneman record, they can, and they're just going to be able to kind of digest it in private without, a lot of noise because the world is just completely dead silent right now. You're in Westchester, right?
I am, although I have to say I've been in upstate New York for about 2 months. In Binghamton, which is what I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Because that same week, it was super weird. So, like, I'm getting these opportunities coming in. It's kind of exciting, but then now it's looking like nothing's happening. My wife and I came up here because her parents still live up here, and we still have a lot of friends up here. We came up that weekend, so it was like March 12th or 13th. And I was actually going to get together with Nick Beggs because he was playing up here in Ithaca with the Howard Jones trio.
Right.
And I had plans to go to the show and hang out, and then the show got canceled. We came up anyways. We ended up having a nice little brunch together the next day. But that was the moment where basically like tours just canceled overnight.
Right.
And with them specifically, being European, it was like everything shifted to we've got to get to JFK.
Can I get home? Yeah.
We've got to get out of this country before everything gets locked down. So that was like really wild. So we came up that weekend and we've been here ever since. We're actually going to make our way back down to Westchester next week because we've been here for about 2 months. And, it's like, what are you going to do? My wife's a reading teacher. Obviously, schools aren't going back in session physically.
Right.
The rest of the school year. Now that we know that officially, which really only came down like a week ago, we're starting to take steps towards going back to Westchester. And funny enough, John and I actually live in the same town, although we've never hung out there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like we'll be able to.
Not immediately.
Yeah,
probably. We can yell at each other through the windows.
Yeah. We can get like coffee and talk to each other from across the street or something. So, what was the question? I lost track of.
I think we were just talking about how COVID sucks.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, look, I think that you just got to roll with it, man. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I think that I had said on the last episode, I do think things are going to bounce back, and I think that there's hopefully going to be a thirst and an appetite for just a lot of human interaction and a lot of like getting out, whether it's going out for a drink, going out to a restaurant, going out to a live show, going out to a comedy show. I think people are just going to want to do stuff. I do think it's going to require some confidence to be kind of built up by those communities and by the venues themselves. But I think it's hopefully it'll all bounce back sooner rather than later. And who knows, from the business side of the house, you might say, well, we had a really down, Q2, but we crushed Q3 and Q4 because everybody came out and they start buying records, they start coming out to shows, and it almost balances out the equation. So let's just hope that that's the case for everybody. Because I know there's a lot of our friends who are, full-time musicians, session musicians, songwriters, just whether wedding band, guys, like it's very, very, very difficult right now for a lot of our friends. And, it sucks, but I think that we can all come together when this is all done and have a beer about it. And you'll tell your kids, we'll tell our kids all this stuff in, 20 years. It'll be like how my parents used to talk about the gas line. Like, except this is way worse, right?
Have either of you guys, sorry if I cut you off, have either of you guys done anything in terms of like Facebook Live, like performance stuff yet? Or
yeah, we've done a few things. I've done a couple clinics online for this great guitar shop. Brian's Guitars has amazing instruments, and I've known Brian forever. And so I did a live Facebook thing like this, but clinic style. And then Dave and I performed on the what was it called, Dave? A few weeks ago?
Stage It?
Yeah, it was from Stage It, but what was the name of the festival? It was the Uncanceled Festival.
Uncanceled, yeah.
And so we did a set on that, and it was interesting because Dave and I couldn't actually get together, or none of the rest of the band. So I ended up playing almost guitar clinic style, playing through something of the last record. All the guitars sucked out except for me, and then glorious CD quality playing. So that was interesting. And Dave did some great singer-songwriter sort of versions of our song. So it's a way to make it work,
Fortunately, we've got, similar to you, we have enough in the hopper and in the catalog where we can bang. I could grab the Taylor and just kind of play some tunes. We couldn't play much off of the newer record because it's a lot more Rush-esque. There's a lot more playing and a lot more just space that you can't really fill up by yourself. So fortunately, in 2020, thanks to Tim Cook and the new Logic, we can pipe in some stuff just to kind of do the clinic-esque kind of stuff. But
and it was actually really fun. It
was great. You should do it, Randy.
Yeah, you should definitely do it.
You should do it. We can help you hook up. Help you set up the audio. There's certain things you could do to make it sound pretty pro, which as long as you got Zoom and you have decent gear. I mean,
yeah.
You said you have a Twin Apollo interface.
I do. Yeah,
a digital audio converter. Yeah.
I mean, look, this record with Marco. I mean, we both recorded it from our home.
Right.
Studios. His drums are set up in his kitchen. So yeah, I mean, I'm basically tomorrow doing my first foray into this sort of thing, which is the Prog Report.
Right.
Doing this big concert called Prog at Home, which is going to be streamed live from their YouTube channel. And it's from what I'm told, it's a 3-hour concert in true Prog fashion.
That's so 2 songs, 3 songs?
The best track ever.
Was it going to be?
Yeah, I said that's if Transatlantic plays 4 songs.
4 songs, that's right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different artists involved. It was an honor to be asked. So Adam Holzman and I are doing a song, and basically, from my understanding, all of us have pre-recorded performances to submit, specifically for this concert. I don't think anybody's truly going live. I think that'd be really hard given how, I don't know how the tech would even work with that. And you've got people in all sorts
It's impossible. Yeah, you can't do it, unfortunately.
It's still going to be really cool and I think really special. It's been a long time since I've personally sat down to watch a 3-hour variety show. But on a personal level, just looking at the list of performers, it kind of blows my mind that I've gotten to work with a lot of these people, and these are a lot of people that I can call my friends. And that's not to pat myself on the back as much as it is just a a kind of surprise to me, because I'm still that kid, like all of us, you know, just kind of like growing up, nerding out on this stuff and being super excited to, you know, buy Scenes from a Memory or whatever, like some Spock's Beard record.
Sure.
Upon release, and realize, like, wow, I totally did not expect to be the guy, you know, who would not only know these people, but actually make music with a lot of people and, you know, have that kind of mutual peer relationship and respect. So I think it's going to be really interesting for me to kind of see what everybody's doing, because we're all doing this from home. And hopefully like kind of a nice little celebration amongst everybody, you know, to just kind of bond over this strange moment that we're all going through.
Absolutely, man. Well said. Well, I guess we're getting close to the end here. So thank you so much for talking to us, man. This was really great. Really appreciate it. And want to be respectful of your time. Please tell everybody who's listening to this, and when we start posting this after the fact, where should everybody go to check you out, and where do you recommend if they want to pick up the new disc? Where should they go? Sure.
Well, I mean, as Randy McStine, I have a personal page and an artist page. Of course, McStine and Minneman, we have a page on Facebook and Instagram. So if you're interested in that project, follow us there. YouTube as well, and Bandcamp tends to be where we host, where I host a majority of my material. Some of it is out there on all of the streaming sites, but I have a lot of exclusive stuff at RandyMcStine.bandcamp.com. You'll find pre-orders for the McStine and Minneman record there as well. We're doing a thing where we've got kind of like multiple packages that you can pre-order. The deluxe package is $25, and basically from now until we release the record on July 3rd, we're going to drop a new song every Friday for everybody who orders that package. This is perfectly 10 weeks, and there's 10 songs on the record. We released the second song today, which is called Falling from Grace, to those people. And so, yeah, I'm out there, and come find me, say hi. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's really fun.
No, awesome, man. Yeah, we're going to be doing this definitely through the month of May, maybe in June for a while. Just, you know, it's not self-serving. It's really just to kind of feel like we're still connecting with people, still meeting people, because we can't go out to like your show, right? We can't do much other than just kind of shoot the shit. And I think this is a good way to connect our fans with people like yourself and vice versa. So, ladies and gentlemen, Randy McStine, thanks for giving us an hour or so of your time. On Monday, we're going to have Andy Van Diet with special guest Adam Holzman and Jane Getter, which should be fun.
Yeah.
And you know, Randy, feel free to tune in if you want to jump in and say hi to Adam, because I know you guys will have just done this little pre-recorded release. Yeah. Are you doing all original stuff, or are you doing covers for that?
We actually picked a cover tune.
I knew it.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, something like this is
it For Enclosed Walls by off of the Flowers of Romance record?
No, it's not that. Okay. But you'll check that out.
It's literally up. We're gonna stop and I'm gonna push play.
Yeah.
And then I'll text you.
Yeah. A little backstory. I mean, I don't want to give it away, but you know, this is something that we were gonna actually do on Cruise to the Edge, because we had planned to do some. You know, we were all gonna be there, and I was gonna do the song that we're doing for this concert in one of Adam's solo sets. And when this opportunity came up, the Prog Report, they contacted me, probably expecting that I would just submit a solo video. And then I said to Adam, I was like, I think this would be the perfect time to do this song that he had in mind for his solo set. So
cool.
That's basically what it is. So, and we'll be on specifically in the 3 o'clock hour. So it runs from 2 to 5, roughly speaking, Eastern time. So we'll be on in hour 2.
We'll be sure to we'll share it on our page, and you know, I'll be on there. So I'll watch it, and you'll watch it too because it's pre-recorded, so you can watch the broadcast yourself.
Make comments. Wow, that was a cool lick.
This guy sounds so good. Oh my god, the song sucks, but this guy's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So congrats on finishing up that record during Q1 and finishing, having it come out in July, and everybody can check out the Marco and Randy record, McStine and Minneman, coming out on July 6th. July 3rd, 2020. So check it out. There's some sampler stuff up online. It's actually over at I found it on Sonic Perspectives. That's right.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we did an interview with those guys, which will probably go up in a few weeks.
Yes, that's where I caught wind of it, and when that came out at the top of the month. So yeah, hey, Randy, thank you so much, man. And for everybody out there, thanks for joining tonight. And we'll talk again on Monday, 8:00 with Andy Van Dyke. Van D, excuse
Van
me.
Det.
Van Det, Van D. I'm sorry, dude. I just call him Andy.
Andy D.
Guys, it's Friday.
He's in town too.
Yeah, Andy's in town. He's a New York guy. Yes, we're gonna have him, Adam Holzman, and Jane. So it's gonna be awesome. Jan Getter.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Very cool, guys. Take care. Have a good night.